January 22nd, 2015. The Japanese release date of Tales of Zestiria and the start of a baffling controversy surrounding a single character from the game, Alisha Diphda. The controversy, if one can believe it, stems from the fact that Alisha departs from the player's party during the first third of the game, only to return and quickly leave again around the final stretch of the journey. For many RPGs, this is actually a pretty standard affair, and I'm sure many of you watching who are well versed in the genre can think of your own examples. A prominent one that sticks out in my mind is the Grandia series most of all, as each of the 3 games in the series has you switching characters in and out on a somewhat frequent basis due to story justifications. Despite this, I recall no such outcry for any of the 3 games, or any other titles in the RPG genre for this practice. In fact, the Tales series itself is no stranger to this concept, with Tales of Symphonia: Dawn of the New World being the biggest offender, as the game is almost constantly switching characters in and out throughout the entirety of the game. There are a few other Tales games that are guilty of this as well, yet none of these games suffered any sort of backlash for doing this. So, with all this in mind, what makes Tales of Zestiria different, and why did it become a controversy in the first place? This largely has to do with the promotional material of the game prominently displaying Alisha in the artwork, which give the impression that she was the main heroine of the story and subsequently a mainstay in the party. I assume a lot of fans before the game's release had already grown a sense of attachment to the character thanks to her design and the tidbits of information that was revealed about her personality. Speaking personally, even I had assumed she would turn out to be my favorite character based on what little I knew about her. That was, of course, until I played it, met Edna, and realized that she was definitely the best character. Those that had played the game but didn't realize that Alisha wasn't a main party member, but rather a temporary one, albeit one that stuck around for a significant portion of the game, felt betrayed and decided to make a huge deal about it, to the point where things got substantially out of hand. This is compounded by the fact that people bought DLC costumes for Alisha's character before realizing that she doesn't even stay as a permanent party member. Okay, pump the brakes real quick because I know how bad that sounded just now. On the surface, it comes across as if people were literally scammed out of their money on DLC costumes for a character that is only available for the first third of the game. Thankfully, this isn't entirely true, although the compromise might still be an issue for a lot of people. This is because the DLC costumes bought for Alisha are then transferred over to Rose, who essentially becomes Alisha's replacement, and is the actual main heroine of the story. It's admittedly not ideal, but it should be noted all the same that the content that you bought is not gone, and therefore the money is not technically wasted. It's also worth noting there is an Alisha-focused epilogue DLC that you can download, which of course also allows you to use those costumes. Unfortunately, the problem here is that the DLC is an extra $10, and while I won't get into the specifics, I can safely tell you that even if you love this game, that the DLC is complete garbage and isn't worth your money. It adds almost nothing to the story and characters, and is generally a waste of your time. Putting the story DLC aside though, another obvious issue with transferring Alisha's costumes over to Rose is that some people may not like Rose's character, or at the very least, may not like how those costumes look on Rose, given that the players who bought them more likely than not did so with the intention that Alisha was going to wear them and not Rose. Honestly, I think the better solution would have simply been to not have any costumes for Alisha at all. This could have saved them a lot of unnecessary headache. Another complaint people have is that Alisha left the party abruptly, out of nowhere, and for no good reason. Well, supposedly at least. This I can pretty safely debunk as being mostly untrue, although it's not without its own separate issues. The reason for Alisha's departure was that she became a strain on Saray, who is still new to his abilities as a shepherd. In order for Alisha to be useful as a party member, Saray had to share his power with her to allow her the ability to perceive seraphs, which are kind of this game's version of spirits, and that in turn allowed her the ability to combat the Hellions, which are this game's version of your typical monster type enemy. At one point, the strain takes a physical toll on Saray, eventually causing him to lose his vision. Alisha concludes that she's a burden on Saray and decided on her own that it was best for her to leave. This then opened up the opportunity for Rose to eventually take Alisha's place. Rose is different from Alisha, mainly because she has a stronger affinity for a sixth sense known as resonance, which is described by the game as a sort of natural aptitude for perceiving seraphs and hellions. Ostensibly speaking, this could have been easily rewritten in a way so that Alisha also had enough resonance to not be a burden on Sorey and continue being his companion, but for whatever reason, that's not what the creators wanted. I can understand not being satisfied with how the game handles this, and I do agree it does come across as cheap. That being said, an explanation does exist, and it is consistent with the rules that were established prior to the event. Not to mention, it was even foreshadowed, as we saw that Sorey was visibly strained by this multiple times before her departure. All things considered, while not great, it's not nearly as bad as people have made it out to be. For all intents and purposes, it really should have just ended there, people getting a little uppity about some grievances that they have, but eventually getting over it. Oh no, my friends, this is where things start to take a turn for the absurd. For some reason, people started perpetuating baseless rumors about how the producer Hideo Baba was the one who single-handedly forced the studio to make the decision to replace Alisha with Rose's character. After searching high and low, reading various articles on the game, I have found zero concrete evidence of this being the case. This is, by my estimation, wild speculation by fans that are trying to rationalize what happened. I've even seen some crazy theories online by people who honestly just don't know what they're talking about. Individuals that will not be named as not give any semblance of credibility to their dubious work. One such theory points out that earlier demos of Zestiria allowed you to play as Alisha in parts of the game where she is no longer a party member, as somehow being evidence of Hideo Baba tampering with the game by forcing the hand of the developers to substantially alter the game's story. I want to let that complete leap in logic sink in for a little bit. The reality is that this isn't necessarily evidence of anything. Let's take a look at both Final Fantasy VII and VIII, which had playable demos as well, and they did pretty much the same thing. In the Final Fantasy VII demo, Tifa is already a party member during the initial Avalanche mission for the introduction of the game, despite that not being the case in the final product. And very similarly, in the Final Fantasy VIII demo, Rinoa is also a party member during the Dalet mission, despite the fact that Rinoa hadn't even met Squall yet by that point in the story. Not to mention, during the FF8 demo, the party also had access to abilities that normally would have been inaccessible at that point. This is just the nature of demos. Developers make these types of changes to show off certain aspects of the game in controlled environments, often labeled as a vertical slice. While it is possible to find remnants of old design ideas in demos, in this specific instance, there simply isn't enough actual evidence to make definitive claims as to whether or not Alisha was initially planned to be a main heroine, and even less so that it was Hideo Baba that was responsible for the change, if there was a change at all. And I do want to make it clear, I'm not ruling out the possibility that this was the case. I'm simply stating that there isn't enough evidence to claim this to be so. When you combine the perceived false advertising and the wild speculation turning into destructive rumors, we have a shitstorm of controversy over something that really isn't a big deal in the first place. People have also used this as an opportunity to lambaste the developers as liars, which I think is very puzzling when you consider that the people in charge of key art and advertising are not the developers. As for why this became an issue in the first place, while nothing definitive has been confirmed, here's some speculation on my part. From my perspective, it would seem that there was some lack of communication that led to the marketing team mistaking Alisha as the lead. That to me is the most sensible assumption when you consider Occam's razor. The simplest solution is often the most correct, especially since the alternative would be absurd. Think about it, what would be the benefit of the developers intentionally lying about Alisha being the lead? Isn't it a more logical conclusion that this was simply a mistake? I think that makes more sense than to automatically assume there was some sort of malicious intent behind all this, especially given how there would be so little tangible benefit from doing so. The whole thing was such an ugly mess that it got to the point where the Japanese fans in particular started sending death threats to Hideo Baba, the voice actress for Rose, Mikaku Komatsu, and even the person that was credited for designing Rose's character, Koisuke Fujishima. Also, for the sake of clarity, Koisuke Fujishima wasn't just hired to design Rose's character. He has been a character designer for the Tales series for several years now. What's even worse is that Mikako Komatsu herself, while attending the Tales of Festival that year, apologized on stage for upsetting the fans. This is sad. Voice actors hardly have any actual influence on the development of a video game. There was no need for someone that was not at all responsible for what happened to apologize publicly for it. If that wasn't bad enough, I think the most tragic thing is that Hideo Baba, who has been the producer of the Tales series since 2007, and even directed the PS2 remake of Tales of Destiny in 2006, stepped down from his role not long after. He never officially confirmed the controversy as being the reason why, but I can't help but think it played a part. I can only hope that Hideo Baba finds success with his future endeavors. The chances of him ever watching this video is slim to none, but on the off chance that he just might, I mean this honestly and sincerely. Good luck to you, sir, and thank you for all of your hard work and dedication over the years. You have been a pillar of the Tales series for so long now, and I thank you for all of your contributions. Some people like to think that what they do have no tangible consequences, but the abhorrent behavior of several fans caused this unsightly debacle, which adversely affected people that were involved to the point where it even affected sales and pricing of the game. I was informed by a subscriber living in Japan that the game's price plummeted quickly after everything went down, making it easy to draw a correlation. Even if you hated this game, and to be clear, I myself have several issues with it as well, surely we can agree that this unsightly controversy didn't need to happen, and that the people involved shouldn't have suffered through it. There are much better ways of getting across our disappointments and grievances with a game that don't involve throwing a hissy fit and, much worse, sending death threats. Now, as an aside, this isn't specifically related to the controversy, but since we're on the topic of squashing rumors, I heard someone say that the game was announced at some point to be fully open world. After researching this as well, no articles came up that even hinted at such a statement. I'm not sure what sparked this rumor, but given the lack of any real evidence, this may have just been a mistranslation of some sort, or maybe an article that went up with misinformation that got taken down. You never know with these types of things. So, with all that said, I think we can finally put this behind us, and hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. But before we close out, I want to give special thanks to my good friend Ironhead Bison for helping me with the copious amounts of research that was necessary for this endeavor. It's not a stretch to say that this video would not exist had it not been for his tireless efforts. Thanks a lot, man. You're a real trooper. I mean that. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.